The calendar has been a hotly debated topic as of late. I can only imagine it is due to our hearts desiring to serve Yahweh correctly. The calendar series we are embarking on are not made to prove anyone wrong or shame any other teachings on the subject, but to simply put forth my understanding at this time, as many of you have asked where I stand. We truly live in amazing times where thousands are coming back to the Most High with a zeal that hasn't been seen in centuries. And to be honest, whatever calendar you're on, I love you as a brother and sister because you have a desire to keep His ways, as do I. Now, we just read about the law of the sun. Sun is pretty easy. It's, other than the 4 intercalary days, where we have one extra day for the solstices and the equinoxes, it's pretty simple. It just does the same thing over and over again. The moon, it's a little different. But let's talk about it. 73 of Enoch. And after this law, so after the law of the sun, I saw another law dealing with the smaller luminaries. So if we want to get the calendar right, Enoch is explaining all the laws, and it's not just the law of the sun, the law of the moon too. Dealing with a smaller or inferior luminary, because we know it's not smaller because we just read that their size is the same, which is named the moon. So the moon has laws too, and her circumference is like the circumference of heaven, and her chariot in which she rides is driven by the wind, and light is given to her in definite measure, so precise, as we read in the Testament of Naphtali earlier. For by weight and measure and rule was all the creation made. Let's look at a couple things. Let's look at Psalm 104:19. Psalm 104:19. He appointed the moon for seasons. The sun knows his going down. So what is that? Let's take a look at that. So we're going to corroborate that the moon has her place in the calendar. He appointed the moon for seasons. And what is this Hebrew word? H4150 is moed. Eventually it'll show up. This is camper life out in the middle of nowhere. So this is the word for feast days, for the congregation, for feast days. So if we want to properly calculate the calendar, we have to use the moon for seasons. And the only way to do that is to use the moon for months. And we'll explain that here in a second. So just to continue on the feasts, so the moon, he appointed the moon for seasons, for Moedim. Leviticus 23, 4-5. These are the feasts, the Moedim of Yahweh, even the holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the first month, at even is Yahweh's Passover. So if we want to properly calculate it, we have to understand the months, and we have to understand the law of the moon. We can't just say it doesn't make sense, or it falls behind the sun 10 days and things like that. It's too hard. It doesn't make any sense. I don't think that's a good excuse. Let's show a couple more scriptures. This is the book of Sirach, also known as Ecclesiasticus. This was included in the 1611 KJV, the 1599 Geneva, and many other, the Slavonic, and many other canons of Scripture. This was considered Scripture for a long time. Only in the 1800s, with the dispensational movement, did they remove this from the Bible. So this is Sirach, Ecclesiasticus 43, 6-8. He made the moon also to serve in its season, to mark the times and to be an everlasting sign. From the moon comes the sign for the feast days, a light that wanes when it has reached the full. The month is named for the moon, increasing marvelously in its phases, an instrument of the hosts on high, shining forth in the firmament of heaven. So this is saying the moon is a good thing, right? He made the moon. He made the moon also to serve it's in its seasons. So if he made the moon to serve for the feast days, how can we just completely dismiss it? We can't. We have to just understand it. We have to slow down and say, hey, there's a way that this works out. Some people would say all over the scriptures where it says new moon, that the word there in Hebrew is chodesh, that it doesn't mean new moon. It just means a renewal, right? So it was translated, chodesh was translated 254 times as month or new moon. So there's a couple things I like to say to that, and I'm not here to make fun of anybody for any calendar they do, but this time around, I really wanted to take another look at the solar calendar because a lot of people are on it, and I can understand why. There's a lot of verses. It's like, there's a lot of decent arguments for it, and I get it. And a lot of it hinges on chodesh meaning something other than, new moon or new month, and the moon not having any connection to the month. So let's take a look at a couple of things. So this is the Hebrew word for moon. This is yareach, right? And then we have another Hebrew word, yera. So we have yareach is moon, and yerach, which was used for month. And this is what I believe Ecclesiasticus is pulling from, that the month is named for the moon. They're named after. You have to admit, yareach and yerah are very, very similar. They're actually spelled the same. So it's only with the additions of the vowel points did this actually probably even become a different word. So look, this is the Hebrew word yareach for moon, and this is yerah for month. And you'll see one of the uses here. Actually, we'll look at it. We'll see here that, and the woman conceived and bare a son, and when she saw him that it was a goodly child, she hid him 3 yerachim, 3 months, essentially 3 moons. You could say, well, maybe they were in Egypt and they were keeping an Egyptian calendar. Maybe. The scriptures really could have cleared that up here. So Exodus 2:2, and the woman conceived and bare a son, and when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 moons, 3 months. We could have been cleared up here in Hebrews 11:23. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. And you look at the Greek word here for months. It is the Greek word for months. So, in any case, I just want to share with you some of the scriptural backing for using the moon for the months, which is what we're starting to read about here. Okay. And I saw another course, a law for her. So the last chapter was a law for the moon. This chapter is a law for the moon. So we see the moon has a lot more components to it than the sun. The sun is very basic and easy to understand. The moon is a little more difficult. I'm just gonna be honest. But we can't just throw it out because it just doesn't make sense. We have to be Bereans about it. And I saw another course, a law for her, and how according to that law she performs her monthly revolution. So it's very clear here in Enoch that the moon has a purpose for the months. And all these Uriel, the holy angel, who is the leader of them all, showed me and their positions, and I wrote down their positions as he showed them to me, and I wrote down their months as they were, and the appearance of their lights till 15 days were accomplished. And the sun and the sun. Now listen to this. So if we read the index of this, I think we talked about this when we were talking about chapter 71. Is when we see the bold, the author changed it to their understanding. So, and the sun and the stars bring in all the years exactly, so they do not advance or delay their position by a single day unto eternity, but complete the years with perfect justice in 364 days. So this tells us right here that's actually not what was written here. That was the translator, R.H. Charles, because he probably didn't understand the calendar back then, decided to change that. But we'll actually read what it's supposed to be. That was Enoch 74. Yeah. So what's actually written is the moon brings on the years exactly. that their stations may come neither too forwards nor too backwards a single day, but that the years may be changed with correct precision in the 364 days. So it is actually, the moon is like the regulator, because how all the pieces work, the sun, the stars, and the moon all move at different paces. And without the moon regulating or bringing in all the years, things can go adrift. We can go adrift from the calendar very quickly. So the moon acts as the regulator. So let's read this again. The moon brings in all the years exactly, that their stations may come neither too forwards nor too backwards a single day, but that the years may be changed with correct precision in 364 days. So it says that the years may be changed with correct precision in 364 days. When this brings up the topic of the 13th month, and this is the biggest argument that the solar-only calendar believers will bring up, is there's no talk of a 13th month, so there's that. Which, yes and no. Up until recently, I would have been like, yeah, you're right. I mean, you got me there. That's the only way we understand how this works. Which this is, to me, at least, we know that people can read the same verse and come to different understandings. To me, when I read this, if I just break it down, it says the moon brings in all the years exactly. So the moon is for the months, and it also regulates the years, that their stations may come neither too forwards nor too backwards a single day. So the moon acts as like the regulator, making sure that the sun doesn't go too far or too backwards, or the sun doesn't go too far, or the stars too backwards, or the months, but that the years may be changed with correct precision in the 364 days. So the moon apparently acts as a regulator and does some changing to make everything work out, which the 13th month does. If you're unfamiliar, if you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about, I'm just new to this whole calendar thing, because, and we'll read about this shortly, because the sun has a yearly orbit of 364 days, or a yearly cycle of 364. The moon has a yearly 354-day cycle. It's a 10-day difference. So what happens is roughly every 3 years, you have to add in a 13th month, because if the moon falls behind 10 days of the sun every year, well, after 3 years, the moon is, you're a whole month off. You're a whole month away, but then you add that 13th month back in, and now you've caught back up. And then after 3 years, you're 30 days behind again, and you catch back up with the 13 days, or the 13th month, excuse me. And for those of you that are like, there's no 13th month, there is a piece of evidence in the book of Ezekiel that I would really love to share with you. So, in 3 years, there are 1,092 days, and in 5 years, 1820. So that in 8 years, there are 2,912 days. For the moon alone, the days amount in 3 years to 1,062 days. In 5 years, she falls 50 days behind to the sum of 1,770. There's to be added 1,062 days. And in 5 years, there are 1,770 days. So that for the moon, the days in 8 years amount to 2,832 days. So why is he telling us this? If it's a solar-only calendar, why do we even need to know all these things? Why, if it's a solar-only calendar, and I'm just asking you, for those of you that are doing a solar calendar only, I love you. In whatever calendar you follow doesn't change my love for you and desire to fellowship and to be brothers and sisters in Messiah. But my question to you is, if it's a solar-only calendar and Enoch is the honeypot for the calendar, let's just be honest, this is where it is. The calendar was not preserved in the Torah. For whatever reason, the Most High didn't put it there. He put it here in Enoch, in a couple of verses in the Tanakh, and a couple of verses maybe in Jubilees that kind of, share a few things. But this, let's just be honest, this is where the calendar is. Why would he have only one chapter dealing with the law of the sun and 2 chapters dealing with the law of the moon? Why would he tell us how many days there are in 5 years or in 3 years for the sun, and also tell us in 3 years for the moon? Why would he tell us these things? Well, because I believe they both have a purpose. They both have their part to play in it. For in 8 years she falls behind to the amount of 80 days, and all the days she falls behind in 8 years are 80. And the year is accurately completed in conformity with their world stations and the stations of the sun, which rise from the portals through which the sun rises and set 30 days. So conformity, all right, what's the word conformity mean? It's to be in agreement. The sun and the moon and the stars have to be in agreement, and that's what this calendar teaches. Let's also read this verse here in the Ethiopian. The year then becomes truly complete according to the station of the moon and the station of the sun, which rise in different gates, which rise and set in them for 30 days. So if we want the true calendar, I'm sorry, I don't want to use those words. If we want to understand the calendar that Enoch teaches, that's what it says. It says the year then becomes truly complete according to the station of the moon and the station of the sun. You need both. And that's why I feel led, and many others feel led, to do a calendar that consists of using the moon, the sun, and the moon. So, let's cover Jubilee 6 now, because a lot of people will say, well, Jubilee 6 says the moon messes everything up. Well, let's dive into that for just a second. Jubilee 6:34. Actually, let's read a little early. And command you the children of Yasharel that they observe the years according to this reckoning, 300 and what's, reckoning, this is what we were talking about earlier, 364 days, and these will constitute a complete year, and they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feasts, for everything will fall out in them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor disturb any feasts. But if they do neglect and do not observe them according to his commandment, and this is we're talking about the law of the sun and the law of the luminary. These are commandments if we're trying to keep the calendar. He said, if you want to keep calendar, these are the laws. Then they will disturb all their seasons, and the years will be dislodged from this order, and they will disturb the seasons, and their years will be dislodged, and they will neglect their ordinances. And that's exactly what we're talking about. This is the ordinance of the moon, the ordinance of the sun. The ordinance means law. And they will neglect their laws. There, right? Plural. Not its law. They will neglect its law, their laws, their ordinances. And all the children of Yasharel will forget and will not find the path of the years, which is what we're reading about right now in Enoch, and will forget the new moons and the seasons and the Sabbaths, and they will go wrong as to all the order of the years. For I know, and from henceforth I will declare it unto you, and it is not for my own devising, for the Sefer, the book, lies written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the divisions of the days is ordained. And let's not forget that this is the book of the courses of the heavenly luminaries. Right? For the book lies written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the visions of the days is ordained, lest they forget the feasts and the covenant, and walk according to the feasts of the other nations after their error and after their ignorance. For there will be those who will surely make observations of the moon, how it disturbs. I would love to see this Hebrew word of how this was translated. They will make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. And this is exactly what we just read in the book of Enoch right here, that the moon comes in 10 days too short, right? In 3 years, right? She's 30 days behind, right? From 1,092 in the sun and 1,062. 5 years, she falls 50 days, right? In 8 years, she falls behind 80 days. So Enoch is confirming that the moon will fall behind 10 days. So it's not like the moon is doing something wrong. The moon is doing exactly what Yahweh made her to do. How it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order. The people will disturb the order. The moon doesn't disturb the order if you follow its ordinances. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they, the people, will disturb the order and make an abominable day, the day of testimony, and an unclean day, a feast day. And they will confound all the days, the holy with the unclean, and the unclean with the holy, for they will go wrong as to the months and the Sabbaths and the feasts and the Jubilees. For this reason I command and testify you that they may testify to them after your death. The children will disturb them. So it's not the moon, right? The moon didn't do anything wrong. Yahweh made the moon to have a pace of 10 days behind the sun every single year. But he's told us how to reckon it, and I'll share that with you. So they will not make the year 364 days only, and for this reason they will go wrong as to the new moons and the seasons and the Sabbaths and feasts, and they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh. So it's the people that disturb them. The scriptures call the moon a faithful witness in the heavens. We read earlier, Sirach 43, he made the moon also to serve in its season, to mark the times, and to be an everlasting sign. From the moon comes the sign for the feast days, a light that wanes when it has reached the full. Brothers and sisters, if we're not using the moon for the months, it's impossible to use it as a sign for the feast days. The month is named for the moon, increasing marvelously in its phases, an instrument of the host on high, shining forth in the firmament of heaven. So, it's the people that disturb them. The children disturb them. They will disturb the order. It's not the moon that does that. It's because they're not properly calculating the 10-day difference. So the 13th month in Scripture. Let's talk about it. So deep within the raging sea of calendar discussions is the topic of the 13th month. If you're unfamiliar, when using the sun and moon to calculate the feast days, a situation arises. There is a 10-day difference between the sun and the moon yearly. Enoch teaches the sun has a yearly trajectory of 364 days, while the moon has a 354-day repeating pattern. Because of this, a 13th month is added approximately every third year for the moon to catch back up to the sun. Some would argue that there is no scriptural evidence to support this. However, today I'd like to let the word do the teaching through the prophet Ezekiel. Now it came to pass in the 30th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I was among the captives by the river Chebar, that the heavens were opened, and I saw visions of Elohim. In the 5th day of the month, which was the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity. That's Ezekiel 1:1-2. So, we must establish time. Ezekiel is writing on the 5th day of the 4th month of the 5th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity. It will make sense why this is important shortly. The visions and prophecy given to Ezekiel in this passage continues until chapter 3, verse 14. So this is still, right? This is still the 5th day of the 4th month of the 5th year. So the Spirit lifted me up and took me away, and I went in bitterness in the heat of my spirit, but the hand of Yahweh was strong upon me. Then I came to them of the captivity of Tel Abib, and dwelt by the river of Chebar, and I sat where they sat, and remained there astonished among them 7 days. And that was Ezekiel 3:14-15. So he began to have this vision on the 5th day of the 4th month of the 5th year. Then he sat astonished for 7 days, bringing us to the 12th day of the 4th month. Here's a visual for where we are thus far. So this is the 4th month of the 5th year. So it's the 5th day of the 4th month of the 5th year, right? So this is 7 days. So right now we're at the 12th day of the 4th month. So then in verse 16, the word of Yahweh begins to proclaim more. And it came to pass at the end of the 7 days, so this is 12th day of the 4th month, that the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, this scene continues into chapter 4, where he is given precise and peculiar instructions. You also, son of man, take yourself a tile, and lay it before you, and portray it upon the city, even Jerusalem, and lay siege against it, and build a fort against it, and cast a mount against it. Set the camp also against it, and set battering rams against it round about. Moreover, take unto yourself an iron pan, and set it for a wall of iron between you and the city, and set your face against it, and it shall be besieged, and you shall lay siege against it. This shall be a sign to the house of Israel. Lie also upon your left side, and lay the iniquity of the house of Israel upon it. According to the number of the days that you shall lie upon it, you shall bear their iniquity. For I have laid upon you the years of their iniquity, according to the number of the days, 390 days. So shall you bear the iniquity of the house of Israel. And when you have accomplished them, lie again on your right side, and you shall bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. I have appointed you each day for a year. Therefore you shall set your face toward the siege of Jerusalem, and your arms shall be uncovered, and you shall prophesy against it. And behold, I will lay bands upon you, and you shall not turn you from one side to the other till you have ended the days of your siege. Ezekiel 4:1-8. Ezekiel was told to lay on his side for 390 days and 40 days, equaling 430 days total. Keep in mind, he is told specifically not to even turn from one side to the other, let alone stand up or sit down. The next date we receive is found in chapter 8. And it came to pass in the 6th year, in the 6th month, in the 5th day of the month, as I sat in my house, and the elders of Judah sat before me, that the hand of Yahweh Elohim fell there upon me. Ezekiel 8:1. That may not, you can be like, okay, well, so what? We first started in the 5th day of the 4th month in the 5th year. But now, after Ezekiel's 430-day endeavor, have arrived at the 5th day of the 6th month in the 6th year. Here is where it gets interesting. If Ezekiel kept a 364-day solar-only calendar, he would have broken Yahweh's commandment to remain lying down for 430 days. Let me show you. So, this is the 5th year, and this is assuming a solar calendar. So, remember, we started the 5th day of the 4th month, but he sat 7 days astonished. So the soonest he could have obeyed Yahweh's word, and the soonest would give the benefit of the doubt that would be benefiting the solar calendar, the sooner Ezekiel started. So let's say he started that day, and all the provisions were brought to him, and he can start laying down that day. So the 12th day of the 4th month of the 5th year. So here's the 5th month. 1 month has passed, 30 days. 2 months have passed, 60 days. So this is the 6th month. The 7th month, 3 months have passed, 90 days. The 8th month, 4 months have passed, 120 days. 9th month, 5 months have elapsed, 150 days. The 10th month, 6 months have elapsed, 180 days. The 11th month, 7 months have elapsed, 210 days. The 12th month, 8 months have elapsed, 240 days. Now we're into the 6th year. The 1st month, 9 months have elapsed, 207 days. The 2nd month, 300 days. 10 months have elapsed, 300 days, right? 3rd month, 11 months have elapsed, 330 days. The 4th month, 12 months have elapsed, 360 days. The 5th month, 13 months have elapsed, 390 days. Now here at the 6th month, 14 months have elapsed. So if you notice here, we're short, right? Only 413 days have passed when Ezekiel's sitting in his house. He was supposed to be lying down for 430 days. You may be like, well, come on, so what? Well, not so what. If he told Ezekiel to lie down for 430 days, not even to turn from one side to the other, we know he wasn't supposed to be sitting. So if Ezekiel kept a solar-only calendar, he would have transgressed here. So we have two options. Either Ezekiel transgressed the command from Yahweh to lie on his side for 430 days, or he did not keep a 364-day solar-only calendar. The only way Ezekiel could have kept the command of Yahweh without transgression, and the text making sense here, is if there was a 13th month added in the 5th year. Let's take a look. So here we are, same thing. 5th year, Jehoiakim's captivity. And this is assuming a 13th month lunar solar calendar. So this is assuming that this was a year that a 13th month had to have been added. If that's making sense, because remember, it said that in the 6th year, in the 6th month, in the 5th day of the month, he was sitting in his house. And as we just saw here, if this was a normal 364-day year, he would have ended too early, right? 14 months, 420 days have elapsed. Note, the count ended on the 5th day of the 6th month, Ezekiel 8:1. Only 413 days have passed when Ezekiel was sitting in his house. He was supposed to be lying down for 430 days. So let's take a look at a lunisolar perspective of this same scene, assuming there was a 13th month added this year. So here we start again, the 12th day of the 4th month, because remember, everything started on the 5th day, but he sat astonished for 7 days, and then got the proclamation from Yahweh to lie on his side for 390 days and 40 days, equaling 430 days. So we'll start here, 4th month, right? So the 5th month, 1 month has passed, 30 days. The 6th month, 2 months have passed, 60 days. The 7th month, 3 months have passed, 90 days. The 8th month, 4 months have passed, 120 days. The 9th month, 5 months have elapsed, 150 days. The 10th month, 6 months have elapsed, 180 days. The 11th month, 7 months have elapsed, 210 days. The 12th month, 8 months have elapsed, 240 days. We're going to add a 13th month this year. 9 months have elapsed, 270 days. The 1st month, 10 months have elapsed, 300 days. The 2nd month, 11 months have elapsed, 330 days. The 3rd month, 12 months have elapsed, 360 days. The 4th month, 13 months have passed, 390 days. The 5th month, 14 months have elapsed, 420 days. This would be, so this would be the marking of the 420th day. This would be the last day of him laying around. Then the 6th month comes around. On this date, according to Ezekiel 8:1, Ezekiel was sitting in his house, visiting with the elders of Judah. He had completed lying on both sides 1 week earlier. I hope that makes sense. It is my understanding at this time that Ezekiel the priest was acquainted with a lunisolar calendar that consists of using the sun, moon, and stars as witnesses to the timepiece. Blessings and shalom. So,